So if you want to work on your reality, actually what you have to do is to work on your energy field. Working on your chakras and working on your energy field will change your reality. Many people say, I can't manifest because I have these things. They didn't understand what their energy is. That's not the problem. The problem is they have to understand that everything is energy.
Welcome to the Hard Part. The guest I have here today, Sonia Skenderovic. Sonia is a gifted energy healer with over 15 years of experience in spiritual transformation, and she has helped and support so many individuals on their healing journeys. And she is also a holistic healer who not only treats patients with their physical illness, but also helps to address their deeper inner trauma. And I had this honor of meeting her through the Neo-Shamanic Society early on this year, where I studied structured shamanic energy medicine. And through working with her directly in many sections, I deeply felt the desire to share this incredible energy healer with the world so that more people can benefit from her gifts. So let's welcome Sonia. You've been so busy lately traveling from Ibiza to Switzerland lately. So what have you been doing lately?
Yes, well, I have to say it's not Ibiza, it's the next island. It's Menorca. It's one of the islands in the Balearic archipel, you can say. It's in the Mediterranean for those who are not used to European geography. It's in the Mediterranean and there are like three islands, Ibiza, Mallorca and Menorca. Yes, and I since COVID, I mean, many things have changed since COVID. I started going to Menorca and more, and because I felt like my life in Switzerland was kind of coming to an end. I'm right now. I'm in Switzerland. You can see it in summer. But it was like coming to an end, this phase of my life. And yes, I went there just first for a retreat. And then I felt like, wow, the energy of this island. It's like, there's something there. Yeah. And now it's 4 years so that I live there, like sometimes come back to Switzerland because I still have my children here. And so, but mainly in Menorca. Yes. Yes. And yeah, what can I say? It's an amazing island. It's an amazing area. I I still don't know why I'm there. It's what you could call nowadays. They call it like grid work. That's how I feel about it. There's something there for me to be there. I have to be there. I haven't really figured it out yet, but it's some kind of grid work, I guess I'm doing there.
Yeah, we always have this calling to different places, and that maybe there are reasons that we're not quite comprehend. We will eventually find out. But I wanted to know, like, what's your life before you get to do this? Like, you get to move around the places that you want. What's your life before that?
Well, I've had quite a few things in my life. I've lived in different countries, like 6 altogether in my life. Yeah, I've moved on quite a lot already with my parents who were immigrants and so on. So basically it's a story of immigration, my life, and with all the good and the bad sides. And then I kind of settled in Switzerland, having family. That was like a normal thing to do. And yeah, with my children, the things started changing. I mean, there was like a new level coming in. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was starting to become more conscious of things, starting meditating. And then maybe 18 or something years ago, I started with Reiki. That was my first initiation into energies. Besides meditating, I always did Buddhist meditation. That's my kind of direction connected to this line, to this lineage. And yeah, the first thing I did was Reiki. And from there, I mean, things just went. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, could you share a little bit more of why you start wanting to learn Reiki? Was there any motivation of going in to learn Reiki?
Of course, yes. I mean, it was like a very low point in my life, very low, like depression, burnout. My life was like I had walls all around me. I couldn't see anything anymore apart like the day, didn't even want to get up or out of bed. And then somebody told me, why don't you go? I know somebody who's doing Reiki. I didn't even know the word. And then I went there and it just hit me. It just hit me. And I guess that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And then with the Reiki, I did like one, two, three, maybe in a year's time. And then my teacher, she told me like, you will find your teacher. I'm not your teacher. You will find your teacher. And then a year after that, I started in a Buddhist tradition. So, yeah, I mean, like always getting more and more aligned. That's how I feel, And now it's also physically being a Menoka, but generally it's like I started tapping into my alignment, or like, let's call it my soul journey.
I feel like a lot of people, when they started off on their spiritual journey, I had that experience of me as well. Because when I first learned Reiki or learned Akasha record, I would have that feelings of thinking, oh, maybe that is the tool that I want to stick on to the rest of my spiritual journey. Or I wanted to become a Akasha records teacher or whatever. At first, usually like that's how people would think of when they started off on their spiritual journey. But I'm curious about on your perspective on that. Like, how did you decided to shift from different tools to all that? And did you feel any disappointment that your teacher is telling you that, no, I'm not your teacher, you have to find someone else?
Which I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a very good question. And if I tap into it, I have to say that I have this guidance in me that I know that there are more steps to come, or I know when there are new steps to come. And which include like more of my capacities. There was this one point when I started feeling, yeah, I'm working with 3 symbols. It's not enough for me, and just channeling energy. I want it more precise. I want to do more. I have to have more impact on people, etc. And I just went on from there. And now we'll talk about it later, I guess, but I come back to my younger years as a child. My father was a doctor. And I never wanted to be a doctor because of that. But I was brought up in a doctor's family. So we always talked about cases and body things and body liquids and all these things. So nothing really scares me about the body, and I can really like visualize very quickly what's in the body. And now these things have come back to me, and we'll talk about it later because I work on physical issues a lot. And then I trace them back to other emotional and soul level issues. But this thing of being able to connect with the body, from a body disease or issue, comes from my childhood, and so it's like, you're like a path you make, from your childhood. And I mean, I have done many things with my father, which have been issues, but I'm so grateful for that, what I had, And my daughter is a doctor again. So there's something in our line of healing. Yeah. Just do it differently. And just come back to your question is like, I feel this guidance and it's always for the best, I never thought I'm going to heal bodily things, etc. and and so on. And I don't want to be a doctor either. And now I'm kind of, things come together, and that's also a life path. And just listen, I think just listening to my inner voice or to my intuition, just always kept me going on and on, and that's now I don't even say I'm ending up in the Neo-Shamanic Society where we met, which is a absolutely great thing for me, because they also talk a lot about body issues.
I am really curious about when you're mentioning about this childhood that you have with your father, observing your father as a doctor, how he treat people. And you can have that visual or intuition of knowing what's going on with the people.
Yeah.
In that young age where when you're in that naive, not really in a professional age, how do you know that like the disease is really connecting with emotion. Like, is there anyone taught you that concept, or how did you observe that?
Well, this was a long process. This is really just in recently, this connection. I had, it came through my own body because I had, from the age of 20 on, I had started having issues. And finally, they found out it's an inflammatory disease, autoimmune disease. Everybody has it now, but at that time, nobody knew about it. And so I had to go on a very personal journey because at 25, I think, they told me that, well, at 50, you'll be in a wheelchair. So it was like my colon was kind of so inflamed that they said that it would get rigid and so on. I'll be 50. With 50, you'll be in a wheelchair. And I remember this moment when the doctor said that, there was this thing in rebellion inside myself. I said, no, no way. And so it was my very personal journey, looking into the disease, the physical thing, the physicality of it, etc., and then starting to look into what may be behind it, inflammations. It has to do with anger and things like that. And that's, yeah, I would say it's a personal journey which brought me to
Do
that.
you do you mind to share that personal journey a little bit more detail? Because I always feel our wounds is our wisdom. Our pain is actually our medicine. The only way that we discover that is through our own embodiment that we have. Every one of us, every healer, we have faced that issue either on us or with our families or close ones, loved ones, and then that triggered us digging into more about the pain of that that we have on our body. So do you mind to share a little bit more on how did you discover that? What's the journey of finding out the truth of how did you actually heal yourself? How did you actually found out that, oh, it's really connected to emotion?
Well, that took me a while, because first there was this rebellion, but still had a lot of pain in my 20s, and so I had to take what they called anti-inflammatories for a long time. And then also little by little, I started changing into natural things, which at that time for me was new because I was a doctor's girl. So and I changed. The first things I changed was like going more into natural things. But of course, the pain didn't go away with that. The inflammation did. And the pain, I would say that's led me to meditation. Yeah, that led me to meditation. So there was the physical side. I was started doing Ayurveda and cleansing my body. After 10 years of taking anti-inflammatory, it took me 10 years to cleanse my body from the inflammatories and so on. So that took me really on my Ayurvedic journey. And then meditation. That was the next one, I would say. And then little by little, the energy part started. And it was only when I started getting into the energetic parts that I really, of course, you can do psychotherapy and things like that, but it's the energetic part which gave me the real understanding, going into the chakras, see what's happening. Because actually your whole life is in your chakras, The first is your security being anchored in this life. So how was your pregnancy of your mother, how was your being born, and things like that are there, there's issues. And then you have all the chakras. Every chakra has information about your life, and it was really the chakra work which gave me a deep understanding, not a superficial understanding. Oh yes, your disease is related to emotions, but so much deeper. So you go in your first year and your pre-birth, and you go then back to your ancestors. You go into karmic things. It's all in your chakras. It's like a record, but that's a journey to see all that.
Yes, I definitely want to dive in deeper into chakras and energy, how you sense the energy and how it's all related. But before that, since your father is a doctor, so basically your father is more of a science side, like Western medication and all that. And for you, and you have that diagnosis, and I feel like your father would definitely be mad if you're just leaving your medication, like you're just quitting to take any medication whatsoever to decide to go on to your natural healing. And obviously, before that decision is a big process, big decision to make. And then afterwards, you have been doing the natural healing by yourself, and it didn't seem to be working in the first few years or so. So how is that process all going on with you? Like how did you decided to just have the courage to not take all that medication?
If I look back, I mean, that was in like my mid-20s. If I look back at it, again, it's my soul. It's my soul talking to me, you know? I mean, I would be a wreck now if I had taken 30 years. So I can see that with other immune disease patients, you know? I mean, you are wrecked when you're 50, 60. So again, it's my soul which was telling me, no, that's not the right path. You go on this path, which obviously meant, like you said, it was conflict a situation with my background, obviously, you know. But I mean, you know, that's what Carl Jung calls the individuation. You go on your own path. I mean, your parents can make your path, you know. So of course, it was struggling. It was with a lot of hardship and so on. But I mean, it's worth it. It's your life. It's what is inside you. It's what your soul is calling you to do. You know, and if you don't do it, you just, I mean, I have been in a depression, and that's what if you don't do this path, you are in a depression. So you're so far away from your soul path. And that's what we call depression. I mean, I treat a lot of people for depression. And for me, it's just you have been, you know, on the wrong path and kind of, you know, letting them come together again, your soul path and your physical circumstances. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, they start taking different actions from the mainstream is because obviously they don't think that a treatment is working with them anymore. So if the audience they listen to this conversation, they'll probably be like they understand their inner knowing. But to able to understand and listen to their inner knowing and to actually do it or sticking to it is a whole nother story. How did you come to this persistence of sticking into your own method? Did you ever doubt it?
I think inner knowing and doing is the same, because if you're not doing it, you're not knowing it. Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yes.
You cannot know and not take actions. If you don't take actions, it's you didn't understand. That's and you see what I mean? So if you understand, and you're so like, it's kind of a dropping in, your soul drops into your physicality. Okay, I see why I was born in this family. I see why I got this disease at 20. I understand. I deeply understand the whole journey, not just in this life, in other lives and all, which is I carry. I mean, we all carry. We carry karma. We carry ancestral things, and all this kind of, you know, came together. And so having this disease, I don't even give it a name anymore, was just the tip of the iceberg, and you just have to go down, you know. And then you come to totally different levels of your being. So that's why I would encourage people, you know, take any issue you have in your life, physical issue, any kind of disease, anything which shows up in your body. It's just your body talking to you. It's, for me, is when people come to me with, like, let's call it bigger issues, you know, I tell them, well, you have been ignoring the voice of your body, you know, and now he has to scream. Your body has to scream, you know. I mean, nobody dares, for example, to talk about cancer because it's a big, big issue. But for me, it's like a screaming of the body, you know? Yeah. The mutation of the cells is an extreme case of the screaming of a body because other things have been neglected on a deeper level. Yeah.
I really like how you're saying in the beginning, if you don't really know it, you don't do it. And if you don't do it, you don't really know it. That is so true. But yet, so many
Just came
people,
to
they
me. Yeah.
don't, yeah, but so many people, they don't quite understand. They can talk about it, they can say they
Yes.
know about it. But in fact,
Mhm.
if you're looking at their
Yeah.
real life, they're not doing what they
Yes.
tell, what they say.
Yes.
They would do the talking, but they're not walking on their walk. So now I wanted to dive deeper into how you were sensing the energy. Now, at the time you were doing your own journey of healing, you start sensing energy. Can you briefly describe how it feel like? How, like, is there any trigger point that you feel the energy, or how is that like?
I would say the first 10 years, I don't want to discourage people, but I would really encourage them. It felt awful because you start sensing everything. I was like sensitive to Wi-Fi's and I mean, not even talking even about people going to being in a train station, taking public transport. I mean, I was sensitive to everything. That's what they call nowadays hypersensitivity. Huh? And so this was like, that was another thing which really cut me. Um, and with, and I guess that's why it happened because, my third eye was opening to new dimensions, but I couldn't cope with it. I didn't know how to cope in this world with it. So at the first, it didn't feel very nice. But I really encourage people who have this hypersensitivity, and there's so many of us who have this nowadays, more and more, is to see it as a gift. Because I didn't see it as a gift first. I saw it as another disease, People kind of say, oh, yes, I have this. It's like a diagnosis. Like I had my diagnosis of my spondylarthritis. It's called my disease. And then that's it, it's a kind of a disease. And it took me a while to see the gift in it, what the sensitivity gives as a gift. And this changes turned everything around. And then I started tapping into this gift I had of feeling people, of feeling into things, of this discernment, seeing also like now I'm looking out at nature and I see the mountain, and I see the energy of the mountain, and the energy of the mountain gives me something. It fills me up, and that's how I would say my energetic healing path started. Yes.
That's a great point. As you point out that everything is energy. It's just the matter of whether we can sense it. And as we become more and more sensitive, we can sense just everything around us. And if you have that sensation, yes, encourage people not to ignore this. It is energy because everything is energy. And it's matter of whether you ignored it or whether you can use it in the best way that it will serve you. Then
Yeah.
how did you start to control, or how do you reshape it into a way that serves you?
I think that started when I started really understanding, and not just, or really knowing about the chakras. The chakras for me is like, boy, when I started really understanding what chakras are, then I could work with them, and I shaped my reality. I mean, the last 4 years living in Menorca, I shaped that. I mean, nowadays they call it manifesting, but it's you shape your reality out of your chakras, and of course you can shape a difficult reality. You can shape out disease. I mean, mankind now is shaping like wars and things. And this is such a profound understanding, that you shape your reality out of your chakras. So if your chakras are loaded with old stuff, with traumas, heavy stuff, distortions, blockages, etc., your reality will be blocked, in professional, relationship wise, etc. That's what we call the shadow work, getting all these layers out of our chakras, and making them lighter in the sense of not heavy, but also lighter in the sense of more light, in them. And that's what I always see. I see the, how do I call it, the quality of light that the chakra has. How light is it?
Mm.
I mean, there are lights which are not light. It's just a little dim thing, with shadows around it. Or is it something really like bright and sunny and shining? And
Mm.
this will define your life. Yeah.
I feel like ever since I understand and study more about chakra, I found out the relationship between our chakra with our manifestation of our life. But before we get into that,
yeah,
because a lot of manifestation in this age, they only talk about some shadow stuff. Well, I wouldn't say shadow stuff. They only talk about like reshaping your brain, reprogramming how you think, how you put your energy towards. They didn't really bring out any stuff about chakra. So I feel like, especially in my audience as well, they always knew about like maybe if I don't manifest something well, it's because I'm focusing on the negative stuff. But sometimes it's not really about it. Can you explain more about the relationship between the chakra and how it shapes our reality?
Yes, that's the anchoring point, huh? The relation between our energy field and the reality, huh? So that's exactly it. So if you want to work on your reality, actually what you have to do is to work on your energy field. Yeah. And energy field, I work with two main things. The energy field is like the chakras, the energetic centers, and the energy field, like, the different levels of what we call the aura, aura field, yeah. So you can work on both of them. And this will, I guarantee, I can really give a guarantee for that. Working on your chakras and working on your energy field will change your reality. It can't be different. It's a natural law. It's like the law, I call it, I don't know, we know the law of gravity. It's we all know it. We don't have to be taught that. Every child knows that can't jump out of a balcony, etc. So we know this law of gravity inside ourselves. And once you understand how energy works, it's the same, I would say, dimension. It's so it's the same dimension as gravity, law of gravity. It's just there. It's there. You just have to understand it. So coming, like many people say, I can't manifest because I have these things. They didn't understand what their energy is, and they are kind of castigating themselves. Oh, I can't do it. I'm not good enough, and everybody tells me you should when you can, etc. And I can't. That's not the problem. The problem is they have to understand that everything is energy.
Can you explain more on how to work on energy field? What do you mean by work on energy field?
Right. So that's the work I'm doing. Would you like me to talk a little bit about the work I'm doing? I call it, again, as a bit in a medical language, it's like scanning. You go in a scan, in an MRI scan, and this gives, you're still the same person in this when you're in this machine, but the doctor sees a different aspect of you. So he sees it on a screen, and it shows the organs and all this, or whatever, bones or whatever, and it's still the same person, but it's a total different view. You see? And it's the same with energy work. I have this person in front of me, like for example you, and I see your shape, etc. You have a hat on, long hair, etc. That's Fiona from the outside. And then I start my scanning. And then I see Fiona from the inside, or from her energetical aspects. And that's the same difference between the body and having the image of the body inside. It's quite far away. You can have a person who is funny and she looks like, okay. And then you go inside and you say, oh, in a year's time, you will have a disease or whatever. I don't want to, say that I can predict diseases, but you can predict the darkness inside, and then it can manifest whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So it's a
so
scanning.
basically,
It's a scanning. That's the first. It's a diagnosis. Yeah.
So just like doctors, they do scanning with their machine and device, but you do scanning with your own skill and gifts. Do you mind to
Yeah.
share a little bit more on, or if you wanna just go ahead and scan me to actually provide an example to the audience, like how is that feel? Like I'm open to share my confidentiality as long as you feel comfortable with it too.
Well, yeah, it's not so easy, Fiona. It's not something I can do
Oh,
on a screen, no. No, that's
okay.
not something. I really have to go into my inner space, and I have
Yeah.
kind of closed myself up. And that's
Oh.
why I do a mostly distant healing, because that's
Uh-huh.
easier for me. It's easier for me if I don't see the person. That
Uh-huh.
sounds
Oh.
contradictory, but
Uh-huh.
so I close myself up in, I have my holy space, my sacred space, and I close myself up,
Mm.
and then I connect to this person from the inside. So it has nothing
Mm.
to do with your outside. It's actually, when I look at you from the outside, that's really like kind of disturbing.
Mm.
It's because
Mm.
then I get hooked on the material side of Fiona, and
Uh-huh.
I have to get really out of this space, or like above
Uh,
this space. So it's a really
oh.
like a very subtle internal process and connection I start having with the person. Yes. So I'm not like,
Wow.
saying, "Oh, you're Aura and you have this and so and so." No, that's not my style.
Oh,
Yeah.
because thank you
Mhm.
for explaining that process of yours, because I feel like a lot of people they only knew one version of how to scan the energy field. Like either you are a clairvoyant and you look at this person and you might see some things outside of
Uh-huh.
it. Yeah, this is my first time to know that there are actually another process that you have to
Mm,
exclude the client from the
mm,
physical person. Yeah. Thank you for
mhm,
sharing that.
Yeah, it's my personal approach, I guess.
Thank you for explaining the process of maybe if people wanted to work with you, what's the process they would have expect. I
Mhm.
saw that you work through physical level, mental level, and emotion and spiritual levels.
Mhm.
Can you explain more on what's the difference between each level and how do you see those fields interacting with the healing process?
Yeah. First of all, since you mentioned it, I mean, every new client who comes there will have a first free session to get to know each other, and that he can feel my energy and I can feel his or her energy and so on. So that's the beginning of the process. And then the process starts once a person just says, yes, I'd like to start working on whatever it is. And then I I create a sacred space, a healing space for this person, and will be in this, you can call it a bubble. And that's where the healing starts. It's the intention of the client which gives the starting point. And
Mm,
this is very important. Well, I also tell this to clients. And
mm,
very often now, more and more people come um, with physical issues. So physical issues, whatever, I've had heart problems, I had strokes, people with strokes who I worked on the brain, and things started moving on from there. And so any kind. I've worked, I don't know what, like chronic fatigue. You can whatever you want. You can take any starting point on the physical side, and then looking into organs, looking in the energy, what's in your body. And this just guides me, it just guides me, and very often people start feeling quite quickly relief from their pain or whatever they had. I just had a client, she had a pericarditis, I don't know what you call it, the heart
mm, mm,
was inflamed, and she did antibiotics, but it still didn't go away, and she still had these always heart pains, strong heart pains. And yeah, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 sessions, and the pain was gone, you know? The inflammation was gone, which was not gone with the antibiotics, you know? And then,
Mm.
of course, we go on. I mean, that's like the first layer, you know. She had this heart issue. So really urgent, hard, you know, you start feeling fear of your life, etc. And then you go on from there, you know. And then comes the next level. The next level is going to be, well, what's behind that? What brought this about? And then it becomes more subtle. It becomes then well, mental things like beliefs come up, and then you go to the emotional sides. What are the emotions? I mean, like the main emotions are like fear, anger, sadness. You know, you look into it. You know what's there. You know, and then you go on, and it becomes more and more subtle. You go into the early childhood, and then you can go, go even subtler, and then you start feeling ancestral things. What is she carrying? Like now I have a young woman. She has varicose veins and inflammations. You know, she can't walk anymore now. She also has antibiotics and things like that. And all of a sudden it became so clear that it's the life current which has been kind of blocked, and it has to do with a female line with the of her female ancestors, mother, grandmother, and now we're working on that, you know. So we're kind of working backwards, you know. You never start with, oh, I want to to heal my, or I don't, heal my ancestral line. You know,
Ancestral.
you see,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not our work. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that's the process. Mhm.
Oh, so the spiritual level is more of the ancestral or past life level?
Yes, that's what
Oh,
I call the spiritual level is like it englobes many things. Yes, the karmic
oh,
patterns, the ancestral patterns which are in your family, and
mm,
you can deduce many things from your life when you go into those. Yeah, and I mean, spiritual is a much bigger term, and then you
mm,
start going into more soul related purpose,
mm,
you know, of your life, you know, that's what we call a soul path, and so on. Yeah, it becomes subtler and subtler. Yeah? You start with a very physical thing, your
mm,
heart, your veins, or whatever, and then it becomes more and more subtle. And I just love this, and because it's just for me, it's such a straight line, you know, and people obviously they don't know. Nobody has taught this. It's not common knowledge yet, I would say.
mm.
So that's how I like to work. I love this kind of tracing back. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. The reason why I wanted to ask you more about to be specific about spiritual level is that actually a lot of my audience, they're Eastern audience, they're either Asians or they're from Taiwan. So I've noticed that a lot of people they tend to believe that they have this karmic relationship with certain people so that they cannot live or whatever, instead of actually working from the physical level, mental level, or emotional level, they started from spiritual
Mm,
levels. That's the reason why
mm,
I wanted to dive into the spiritual levels. And for people, maybe they don't really have the physical levels yet. They have not formed that, body is not
mhm.
screaming yet, but they
Disease.
feel like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
yeah, they wanted to cut something off from somebody else, but they went directly to
Okay.
spiritual levels. Can you
Okay.
explain a little bit more on like how is the process supposed to be? Like, is there any recommends on that?
That's really interesting what we are discussing here, because I'm totally coming from the Western perspective, huh? Where people
Hmm.
just start thinking once they are ill. And
Hmm.
you come from the Eastern perspective. I've never had an Eastern person as a client, I have to say. That's very new to me and so interesting. Yeah, of course, you have this total different tradition because you know about karma. In the West, you have to explain about karma.
Hmm.
Um, Oh, that's a hard one. I have to dive into the energy of the Eastern culture. Yes, I'm really not an expert, but it feels to me that it's a lot of fear-based
Hmm.
thing, there you see karma as, oh, my God, I have to do this, and he did this or whatever in another life, and it's a kind of fear-based thing. Is that right?
Yes, we often have this either God or psychic or something. Maybe it's somehow related to Western tradition as well. Like God is saying this is what you're supposed to be, or this person is going to have this connection with you, so you have to solve this karmic relationship, and they get stuck into that karmic mindset of
Yes.
thinking, oh, they can never get out of it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's what I called fear. I felt like fear-based. Yes, you're stuck. Yes, that's also a kind of belief. I'm not against the belief of karma, obviously, but how they see the karma as something being stuck and inevitable, and it's there, etc. That's a belief. I don't think that's what I call spiritual. Because spiritual is just, it's a much broader term, and which has to do how the spirit embodies in you, through you, to your body, in your life. And karma is one aspect which can cause problems, the spirit not to embody. You see what I mean? But the spiritual aspect is much broader. So I guess that with Asian people, you might have to work a bit more on this kind of karmic beliefs that they have, which is maybe also a mental thing.
Oh,
I
I see.
just dare to say that, it's really new to me. You're putting me in a situation there, Fiona. I would have to look much more deeply into it, but I would love that because having also like work on the Asian people, maybe with you, Asian person from the Asian background, about this karmic dimension. There might be other things coming up than you think. Yeah, if you scan
wow.
it,
Wow, totally.
beliefs, mental conceptions.
Because belief is considered a sort of energy as well. It would store in our energetic field and blocking us. Yeah, so pretty much like everyone may have different situation. It really depends on what's our energy field form. And you were also mentioning about the energy work would help people to align with their soul path. What do you
I love
mean by that? Like, do you help people to come into remembrance of who they are, what they are, and what are they coming here to do?
I would like to take an example I just had yesterday. I'm rewriting my homepage, and I asked testimonials of different people who've been working with for the last couple of months. And there was this young man. You can find him on my homepage now. It's a video testimonial, my first one. He's like 32, something like that, from Spain. And when I saw him in March, we were at the Buddhist festival, and I saw him in March, and I knew him a little bit because I knew his mother and so on. And then I could just see something in him, which I thought, oh my God, something has to be done there. And very gently I approached him, and so I've known him as a child already. And yes, and then he said, yes, let's do something. And what was happening with him is that he had a totally open third eye. So he saw everything. His 6th and 7th chakra was all open. And you would think that he is spiritually connected. Of course he was. But he was like floating in a space, and that's what I saw. And I told him, wow, you're just floating, in space. And he said, yes, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to live. I don't know what to work. I don't know. He was in this state of I see everything. I understand everything. And then, so what? So what? What do I do with that? You see? So you could call him a spiritual. That's what he called himself, spiritual. But obviously he was very also eager to develop. And I just told him, well, you need grounding. You need grounding.
Mm.
So your chakras, upper chakras, need a corresponding lower chakras stability. It's
Mm.
like a tree. You know, you need the roots in order to grow. The tree can't develop its big branches if it doesn't have the roots for it, you know, and it always goes
Mm.
parallel. And he just developed this thing. He was psychic. He's a total psychic. He can see everything, you
Mm.
know, but it didn't lead to anything. He was totally like lost in life, you can call it.
Mm.
And then we started working.
Mm.
And like 3 months later, you can read it in the see it in the video. I mean, his life has changed totally. He has now he knows what he wants to do professionally. He's working on that very hard. He has found, let's call it, his twin flame.
Mm.
Wonderful young woman. Yes, yeah, and that
Mm.
was in April, you know. And he's moving to a different country to settle down. He has a very clear professional idea now, and also his body is totally different. He is anchored. So that's what I call spirituality. You see, and he was spiritual, but he didn't have
Mm.
any grounding in this world, and that's what I call um this real spirituality is embodiment. And that's your soul path, because the soul wants to come here. And he was kind of always
Mm.
drifting. That's what we call the leaving defense. You know about that,
Mm.
huh? Just
Yes.
leaving
Mm.
in space. Yes. And that's not the
Mm.
soul. The soul doesn't want to leave
Mm.
because the soul decided she wanted to be here because she came
Mm.
here for something, to
Mm.
experience things. And now with his gift, he's very psychic. He is working with Ayurveda. He's an Ayurvedic therapist. So now he will anchor that in his life.
Mm.
So you see what I mean? Soul
Yes.
journey is always connecting to your soul, is also being, what can you do in your life, in this incarnation, with whatever you are? Just anchoring it here.
That is a big topic actually I've been having with different friends as well. Since a lot of my friends were spiritual, and even for me at
Mhm.
a time I feel I wasn't grounded as much. I still have friends, they are psychic when they were born. They could see the
Mhm.
image and even provide prophecies to other people. But in their real life, like what can they do about it? They can't really follow
Mhm.
their passion, and they can't really quit their
Mhm.
job to do what their soul's coming here for.
Yeah.
And they may have
Yeah.
a brief idea of knowing what to do, like what that whatever they're doing right now is not their soul path, but yet they still could not move forward to it. So would you
Mhm.
care to
Mhm.
explain a little bit
Totally.
more on how did you work on that young man, and is there any like a key breakthrough that you would?
Yes. I think the first thing was that I really could scan him. I could see the third eye
Mm.
is open, but he was all in his these upper spaces. I could see the energies in the upper spaces, and I could see that
Mm.
there was no ground. I could physically see like he wasn't touching ground, you know. And that's
Mm.
why I approached him. Yes, you could feel that it's like his feet are touching, but his energy is not touching the ground, you know. So that's the
Mm.
first thing, huh? You make a scan and see, you know, where the person is. That's what that I call the scan. And then
Mm.
it's very obvious, like what you have to work on. You have to work on the grounding, and that's the
Mm.
first, second, sometimes also the third chakra. I work like the lower chakras. Yeah, we have like the three lower chakras. Then you have the heart, which is a kind of the door into the
Mm.
upper chakras. Yeah, and very often people only live from here, like the spiritual
Mm.
people only live from this chakra on, yeah, and they live only from this chakra on because it's a defense mechanism not to have to look at the lower chakras, at our
Mm.
shadows, yeah. And then I
Mm.
started working on the lower chakras, kind of opening them up, and then many topics come up, you know, mother, father, things, early
Mm.
childhood, and many things, fears. That was in the second chakra, many fears, and so on, emotions. Yeah, the first and second chakra work on that was very, very important for him. And but since he was so spiritually advanced and energetically knowledgeable, it went very fast, but you have to do it.
Yes.
You can't bypass it. That's what we call the spiritual bypassing. And if you want to put your gifts, your what soul path means path, you want to walk the path on this earth. Your soul wants to walk the path on this earth. Yeah. And for that, you need feet. You need your feet. You
Yes.
need your roots. Yeah.
Yes.
Which then is like relationships, job, money, things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like with the real life story helps audience and myself to understand more on the energetic level and how the chakra works. And with lower 3 chakras, is there any recommendations on those, or are they mainly just mother father wounds, or is there any deeper than that?
Yes, you can go much deeper. I mean, fears. I know it from myself. Fears is a topic you can work on your whole life on. You have fears from your infancy, from your childhood, but then I can tap so easily for myself now into fears, collective fears, existential fears, you name it, it's really like planetary fears. For that, you can go so much deeper, than just mother father wound. Yes, but of course you have to start somewhere, and you start with this life. That's important. You have to start with this life to give you a little bit of space and groundedness with that, and then you can tap into more collective things, because you are ready to embrace this. No, not everybody can embrace like collective fears. We see them now everywhere on television. All these collective fears give war. But if people would have faced them, or would face them, there would be no bombing. We wouldn't need the bombs outside because we looked at the fears inside. Yeah. So it's infinite. Look, fear, for example, is an infinite topic.
Oh, fear can be a lot, right? What about people? Because I feel like a lot of spiritual people, they are not feeling belonging on the earth. They feel like once they get into spirituality, they need to be isolated from a lot of people, isolated from their original friends and family. What do you suggest this approach on their spiritual pain? If you would help them to
Yes,
work on that.
That's a big pain, loneliness, that you're kind of lost. You don't know what you want in this world because this world feels so useless to you, and all that. That's a big issue. I think also a lot of even wars come from that, because people are lost and they say, okay, we're going to this direction, but actually they should do something else. So this spiritual loneliness and lostness, it's a big thing. Yes. It's the same as I said for this young man. It's a matter of working with your lower chakras. It's really simple. If you have overdeveloped your upper chakras, you will at one moment you feel this disconnection with the with Earth, with the world. Yes, and then you're kind of drifting. You have this very thin thread which still keeps you with your body on this earth, but you're kind of, drifting. And if you don't anchor this, I mean, that's what Buddha did. I don't know if you know the posture of Buddha. He has this, either his hands like this, or he has one hand like this, and one with 3 fingers, or 2, I'm not sure, on the ground. That's a very common position, a mudra. It's called a mudra. And that's what Buddha did. He anchored, you need to anchor. He didn't call it like that, but he has this, you have this mudra which lifts you up, but then you have to anchor it in life. And yes, that's something I really like. I feel very, very engaged in it. Yeah. Also for spiritual people to find this balance between life and spirituality. And life is everything, it's relationships, it's jobs, it's like I said, money. Yeah. And that's where it shows, how are your relation. You don't have to be your family's best friend, but you still need relationships on a different level, maybe, experience things, and like also as a couple, move into new sorts of relationships. I think a big thing nowadays is the male female, this divine feminine masculine, etc. But you have to anchor it, don't talk about it, live it, get up in the morning together. Look at each other's eye in the morning, and that's what I really try. Mhm. I try
Yeah.
to do this. So, balance, balance, balance things. Yeah. Mhm.
I definitely feel resonate because I've been through that upper three chakras being too open and feeling ungrounded and feel like I need to isolate
Okay.
myself from my original families and friends, and nobody's really ever understand me. Hope
Yeah.
that resonate with a lot of audience to really remember to work on their lower three chakras. I have heard so many people, they're energy healers as well. We never really understand like what's the difference between different energy healers and what are the difference between your energy healing and others.
Yes, well, actually, your question is how to choose an energy healer, huh? From the different systems,
Oh,
huh? Is that a bit
it could be.
what you
And
wanted to say?
what's your like highlights on
Yeah.
your healing part?
Yes. Well, like I said, it's this scanning, this very precise scanning I can do, and then see where the issues are. That's my thing. And the second is, I would like to say this to the audience: if you look for an energy healer, or energetic healing, just look out and maybe try different things and see where you are aligned, because you have to be aligned with the person, with the energy of this person. You cannot say, I'm doing energetic healing with this person, but I kind of don't like her, or something, you feel a kind of resistant, like even physically, she's not pleasing to you or anything, So you have to align yourself with this energy healer. And that's what I do. My speciality is really, I start off like one free session just to get my first things, and then I feel into the person and I try to align into their path. And maybe this is like my speciality, that I can align to a wide range of people. And feel whatever there is, if you're Asian or whatever, Eurasian or whatever, and then really go into their specific personal story. That's maybe my faculty that I have acquired, which I'm very thankful for. It's a deep understanding about humans and human energies, yes, which I have developed. Yeah. Mhm. I'm very grateful for that, that I was able to do this in my life. You see, that's what you call soul path.
Yeah, totally. We have to really cultivate the discernment to actually feel whether you resonate with this energy healer. But I believe that there are still a lot of people, they would not as much to know themselves, or yet they are filled with lots of information, lots of choices. With that, how would you advise to them to discern what they really want?
It's an inner discernment. There's nothing, outside. If you want to work with chakra, with aura chirurgy, I have a friend who's done that recently, and so you have to feel this inner pull. You see, you hear the word chakra, and then I would like to go there, or you hear the word like aura. She's working on the aura. She's doing surgery, aura surgery. Yes, friend went there. And for example, when I hear aura surgery, I feel like, doesn't do anything to me, You see what I mean? So you look at different people and you kind of read their webpage And even like you look at the picture of the person, etc. I mean, I also very connect much with, like physically how I
Mm-hmm.
feel about this person. Um,
Mm.
and and then you tap into it, and I think the most important thing is your intuition. Like,
Mm.
I've told you now a bit about my life story. It was always navigating with my intuition, There's, I think that's the compass. That's the only thing I can say. Stay into your intuition, in your alignment, you can also call it, and let the information come. Yes, of course, you will see different healers and web pages and so on. And then you kind of, see, this one, which one is more chakra healing or aura healing? What, just even the word, what does it do to me, It's an intuition.
I definitely feel like as we are working on the spiritual path, we are getting to this inner knowing, or you could say intuition. But for people who are like me, coming from Asian culture or Eastern culture, we were basically told to ignore our intuition, ignores our like that's called gut feeling. It
Wow.
is
Yes.
not really easy to cultivate that, and
Wow.
I have interviewed so many people.
Mm.
They're Western or Eastern, and I often found this common thing about Western culture is that every one of them, they already have this inner knowing of when they're a little child. They have this intuition to go with the flow, to actually tap into their intuition, like what's their guts telling them. And that seems to be a normal stuff to tap into. But for Asian people, it's not really as easy. So if
Wow.
you would
Hi.
have
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, and so if you would have suggest for anybody to cultivate their intuition or inner knowing, what would you suggest them?
Mm. Mm. I'm tapping and trying to tap into this now Eastern culture, Asian culture, as you say, and what comes up right now is again this thing of mental. There's so much mentalizing, even if you're in your religion, maybe. There's so much mentalizing. I feel the third chakra very strongly, which is the solar plexus, which is the mental level, and this is kind of, then your energies are blocked here. You see, it's like a blockage, and then you can't access the higher chakras, and the intuition is in the sixth chakra. So very basic here, improvising now, as you are challenging me, I would say you have to work on the mental level.
That's amazing. And I feel like as you were bringing that up, that our heart is actually what brings the things through from material to spiritual. I feel like a lot of people, they're not being able to tap into their own intuition, is that
See,
there's a door
yeah.
closing in between.
Yeah.
And that's why my podcast is called The Heart Pot, is that ever since I found
Yes.
out
So nice.
the importance of the heart, and that cultivates our inner knowing, as we say,
Yeah.
intuition. So yeah, and that is one of the questions I usually ask our guests at the end of our podcast as well. What is the one thing that you can suggest anyone to create mind and heart coherence?
One thing is, like I said, working with a therapist on it, and it becomes really clear to me that it's this blockage here, and there's no access to the heart, and even less to the higher chakras, So even people who say they're religious, they believe whatever, and if they don't have this crown chakra open, it's nothing. You can see this in the world, the most strong religional fights are because people are in the first chakra and not in the so that's the therapy thing. I would suggest to work on that. And otherwise, I have a very good experience for long years because I worked also like with young adults and with all their issues. and that's where I started working with mind heart coherence, like heart coherence, you know, the one with which comes from Mind Valley. Already in the 80s, 90s, they did a lot of things. It's a whole movement. You know about this Mind Valley movement of heart
Yes.
coherence?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yes. I had a lot of success with that, also with young people. It's a very simple breathing technique. Just go on the internet, get us a couple of information what mind heart coherence is, and then do the breathing exercises. It is so easy. It shifts like the energy of your body. You can do it. They recommend it like 5 minutes, 3 times a day. But even if you do it 5 minutes 2 times a day, you can already see differences. It will shift this the energies in your body. Yeah. So breathing, yeah, and heart coherence breathing is for me. Wow, it's amazing. I've had amazing results with that. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe one example, I have a meditation group which I have been leading for 2 years now. It's a women's group. I do it sometimes online, sometimes in a space when I'm in Switzerland, because it's a Swiss group. And we have been working for 2 years every month together now. And every session we start with 10 minutes of heart coherence breathing. And it just created such a coherence in the group and a heart connectedness and connectedness with the hearts of others. It's mind blowing. So that's my personal experience. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. And I did interview with others. They happen to have the advice as breathing as well. So the breathing is so important when it
Okay.
comes to
Okay.
really center ourselves to bring our energy back to our heart and to our body. So last but not least, what is the one thing you wish you could have done or you would want to say to your younger self?
I was, like many, much too long in my mental body. I thought that with my brain and with my will and with my power, willpower, I can succeed in life. And ignoring other aspects of myself, which were like, this heart thing I had. I've always been very compassionate, also very sensible. I had a high intuition, but I was like nothing, I can't trust that. Or what's this voice, So that's what I would recommend to myself and to everybody. We are all so geared towards performance, toward willpower, towards doing everything from our will centers, and that's the third chakra, the will center. That's the will center, and particularly for women, I'm very, very also like close to all this topic about women, finding their femininity, their intuition side, and all that. Life is so much different if you work from that space. So much different, so much lighter, the heaviness when you have to bring about everything with force. Whoa. Yeah, that's what I would say to my younger self.
Wow, that's amazing.
Trust your intuition.
And
Yeah.
yes, trust our
And
intuition.
work from that space. Work from your heart space and your intuition space, which is the fourth chakra, the sixth chakra. And I'm not saying only women, but I'm concerned about women because I am a woman. It changes a woman, yes. Changes the energy of a woman, yeah.
That's amazing. So from rating 1 to 10, how much do you think you're right now operating from your heart in your daily life?
Yes. I read that question you put, and I thought, I can't answer this question because the heart doesn't work with, or at least I don't work with. It's a 1 to 10. It's a metric system, And I found with myself that sometimes I think, okay, now I open my heart. My heart is open to the world and so on, and then I make like a jump in my consciousness, and then I feel like, oh, I have to start again. I start again from 1. Like for example, for these people, I can't be compassionate. I've been starting I've been now compassionate with my friends and etc., with my family. And then all of a sudden you see, but oh no, these people, I can't be compassionate. So you kind of drop again, you see? And then you
I
build
see.
yourself up. So I think it's a consciousness thing, which is always expanding. So I can't put limits, not from the bottom, not on the upper part. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm always
totally.
questioning myself. Make it short, yes. I'm still always questioning, observing myself. Where do I stand? Also with close people. Oh my God, with this one I can't be. I can't accept him, etc. And you think you have an open heart, and yeah, doesn't work like that.
Thank you, Sonia, so much for sharing all this knowledge about energy healings and the works that you do. And there are so many things, the mysteries of energy and mysteries of energy healers often, because we don't see it, we wonder what is that, and is that for real or what? So thank you for explaining that thoroughly to the audience. And where can the audience find you, and what are you currently offering?
Yes, thank you for giving me space for that as well. Also explaining about what energy healing is. I would like to kind of contradict this maybe general thing that people might think, oh, that's something for spaced out people, but it's really a very physical, material, down to earth thing you can do with energy healing. I hope that came through a little bit. That's what I want. And yes, you can see me on my homepage, sanyahealing.com. And I guess you also put it down there. So you can go to my homepage. You can read a bit about me. You can read about my story as well, which I've also talked about here now. The offerings right now, I have like two main offerings, which I kind of found for me, worked for me. The one is like the coaching, healing and coaching, where I mean like in a session, like an hour and a half in a session, and we do the scanning and we do the talking and the explaining, etc., the diagnosis and the healing. That's like what I call a false healing session. And this should be an ongoing thing. And then I also do like support. People can come when they have an issue, any kind of issue, like, wow, I have this diagnosis, whatever it is, physical mostly, and they feel like, whoa, I'm totally lost. What's going to happen, a physical issue or an emotional, I was left by my boyfriend, or I lost my job, or anything, any, like an emergency thing. And that's what I offer, kind of this intensive support. And I do it like a month, once a week, a healing. And then we start looking at the things to calm down the energies. And then we can develop into more, like they have the full healing sessions, but calming down and settling the person who is maybe all over the place because of a diagnosis, etc. So I also work like on long-term things. I like that, really, to have the person come out of a difficult situation, and I know that I can do something, about it. Also, like, people come to me having an operation, a surgery, and I accompany people in surgeries because there's a lot of fears coming up and all these things, etc. And that can also be a starting point, like in the physical realm. And then obviously people who have issues with jobs, relationships, can't find a partner. I'm not promising a partner, but on the way, I've had so many, I never talk about this because I don't want to give any promises, but I have to say, on the way, a lot of things have happened sometimes in this after those healing sessions. Yeah, yeah. So that's about what I offer. And obviously, there's always this free first connecting session where we connect our energies, and we can also obviously talk, explain. I do a lot of explaining, as you can see. I can explain things. So anybody is welcome just to contact me on my through my homepage, or no, you can even contact me on WhatsApp. Emergencies, any emergency, contact me and we can start something. Mhm.
Well, thank you, Sonia, for today's sharing and so many great things that you offering to the world. If you like Sonia's page, I'll put the link down below or comment below if you don't see any link. And well, I will see you all next time. Remember to subscribe our podcast, and so you will hear more about different people, how they let their heart lead the way. Thank you, Sonia, for today.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Bye. And I'll see you soon privately.